We have two texts this morning. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 8. And our second text will be Matthew chapter 22, verses 36 through 40. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy and it does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others, and it is not self-seeking. It's not easily angered, and it keeps no records of wrong. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Matthew chapter 22, verse 36. Teacher, what is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. When we look at the Christmas season, I think we would all agree that Christmas can and has and probably will continue to be a very commercialized holiday. I mean, I don't think anyone, I don't need to ask you to raise hands, because I think we all already agree to that. I think we understand that that's a wrestle, that's a struggle point within our society. That's probably a wrestle and a struggle point even within our lives. Is we want to embrace the idea of gift giving. We want to embrace the idea of decorating. We want to embrace the idea that the joy that this holiday season brings, but we don't want to embrace this idea that takes it to just a common thing. We don't want to make the spirit of this season what it's not meant to be. And I think in many cases, we have fallen prey to that. And I want to give you just a couple of examples of how there are three areas I think that we as maybe a church, but not necessarily us, but we as a society wrestle with this meaning of Christmas. And so first off, I look at costs. And so I have three quick points. There we go. Cost, logistics, and family drama. I think these are three very easy areas that all of us would agree the holiday season gets distracted by. And so when we are distracted from what the season's about, and by the way, today I want us to focus on Christmas being, or this season being, about love. And so it's not just something that we want to focus on in December. It's something we want to focus on year round. But this is a season where love is supposed to reign. And oftentimes these three topics, they interfere with that. I read an article the other day that was talking, and the whole point of the article was, what is the expected value that a parent should spend on a child? And they gave dollars. So they said, this is what you're at this certain age, you should spend X number of dollars on your child. And then there was on TikTok, and TikTok had a video where a person was talking about this is what I would expect someone to give to their child at this season. What message does that share? What message does that say? It's commercialized. Receiving is the most important part. And so then what begins to happen, and I don't know if this is any of you, but I know that this is a situation that many people in our world are going to wrestle with. Maybe it's some of you, where the idea is that we're going to use a little plastic card to buy things for people because we feel the expectation to do it. And as we felt the expectation to do it, we're going to bury ourselves into a financial hole that we're going to be sitting in saying, man, Christmas was sure pretty. I sure gave a lot of gifts that I wanted to give. But now I'm making a monthly payment that I can barely afford. And if you read the financial market right now, you're going to notice that they're saying that the average American is living on credit card debt just to afford groceries. So the sheer cost of this season, by many respects, is a very difficult pill to swallow. It's a high stress point. Another area, my second area here, is I look at logistics. And this is a problem for my family, but we actually have a really good solution. My family lives in Oklahoma. Ash's family lives here. And so we said, look, we're gonna alternate holidays. It becomes very easy when we say, well, we were in Oklahoma for Thanksgiving. We're going to be here for Christmas. And next year we'll rotate. So for us, that's the cycle we figured out. But what if all of your family lived here? And what if someone wanted to have Christmas morning, but someone wanted to have Christmas evening? What if someone had Christmas on the 23rd, but someone else was saying, well, we can't really do the 23rd, we got to do the 26th. And so you start doing this logistic juggling match of who's going to be where when, who's going to get what gifts to wear. And oh my goodness, who's going to make the turkey? Who's going to make the ham? Can we trust a new person to cook the ham, or does grandma have to cook the ham? This is a logistic nightmare. And then we put stress on it because we say, well, what's that? It's got to be perfect. It's got to be perfect. And then the logistic nightmare is what if we just said, look, I love you, but I don't want to see you. I mean, you can't pretend there's not times like that where it's like, I love you, but I don't want to be with anybody. And so the stress of this season makes it to where it's like, oh. The third area that I look at and I see stress is family drama. You all have a crazy uncle, a crazy aunt, cousin, I don't know who. And if you don't know who that person is, chances are you are that person. You have the cousin who borrowed money from you, who never paid you back. You got that one person in your family, you're not going to say who they are, but no one really wants to be around them because they're a little rough around the edges. The words they use, well, I don't want my child hearing that. And so we create, we have these situations of tension within our family where we know it's like, man, this is rough. I love my family, and I actually do love my family. We have a great relationship. It's like there are times where the family drama is the word palatable, where you could cut it with a knife. Where it's like where the tension is just like, ugh. And so as I look at what is intended to be a season of love, often becomes a season where these three stress points reign. My purpose today is to remind you that this time period is about the love of Christ. That this month, this year, really, our entire lives, but I want to, instead of focusing on cost, logistics, family drama, and any other thing that could bring stress during this time to you, I want you to stop those focuses. I want you to focus on the love of Christ. That's the point of this season. That's what we're really here for, is it not? That's what every step in the Christmas season's about. If we're going to take Jesus and put him back as the reason for the season, as the little saying says, then we have to put love back at the place that it belongs. Now, I also noticed that when I was looking at this particular list of sidetracks, I realized that this same list of sidetracks also applied to Jesus. I realized that this same list of cost, logistics, and family drama applied to Jesus. What did it cost him to come to this earth? We know that was the end, but let's go before the incarnation, before Jesus became flesh. Let's go back before that for a moment, and let's look at what really he gave up. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 8 and verse 9. For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, so that through his poverty you might become rich. I'm going to use this verse in a minute, so I don't want to quote it yet. But in Philippians, it says that he gave up the splendor of heaven so that he could come and take the humble estate of a person. We'll quote that one in a minute, but we have this reality that Jesus existed before the incarnation, before he became a baby in a manger. Jesus was existing. As John would say, he has always been there. He was with God in the beginning. So if he is already dwelling in the presence of God, if he himself is God, what did it take for him to put on a body? What cost did he give? What did he surrender for that? Sure, we're going to move forward in life and we're going to see the crucifixion. That's what the Easter season's about. But what did he give up to even come here to the first place? What was the cost that he paid so that he could even walk this earth? I look at the reality that he left the Father, that he embraced humanity, and he embraced poverty for what he knew would be a horrible future. I mean, he was going to wake up someday and he was going to hit his thumb with a hammer. In heaven, he never had to do that. He was going to wake up someday and someone was going to nail spikes into his hand. He never had to do that. If that isn't love. What about the logistics of this? I mean, you think about it, we're talking about, I'm complaining about, traveling to family and who's going to schedule what on what day and all that stuff. And I look at just the logistics of Jesus, and we say that he is dwelling in the presence of God, that he is one with God, that he is in complete and perfect unity. And he separates himself. He creates some form of a division so that the Son portion can come to earth. John chapter 1, verse 1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. So when God said, "Let there be light," Jesus was there. But jump to verse 14, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we've seen his glory. So what John is saying is that Jesus existed in heaven and that at some point he separated himself from God and chose to come here, took on a body so that he would feel the pain that we feel, so that he would endure nausea, so that he would endure whatever the physical body can endure, and so that he could know it. This is where I want to quote Philippians chapter 2, verse 6 and 7, who being in the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage, but rather he made himself what? Nothing. Made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. He surrendered the glory that was his, and he traveled. He traveled further than Josh travels to go to Oklahoma. He traveled, he gave up all of the things that he had, and it wasn't a logistic nightmare for him because he welcomed it. The cost wasn't something that he weighed. It was the cost for him to do this was so great, but was so minimal to him because he was looking at you and me. And he said, the logistics, I don't care. I'll make the logistics happen. But then I also look at the family drama. Rick just said in his communion talk, there wasn't room for him in the family home, so he had to sleep. He was born in a barn. You start thinking about the family drama that encircles Jesus's life. Now families were close knit. He grew up in a really good family. So please don't read into this that Jesus grew up in some sort of like convoluted family, but his family was just like yours and mine. He had a crazy uncle somewhere. He probably had a cousin who probably owed him money. He had all of these things in his family because people haven't changed. They're still the same. And so when we look at Jesus, he grew up in that. But what's more so, let's look on a spiritual level for a moment. What does Romans tell us that we are? This is Romans chapter 5, verse 8. For God demonstrated his love towards us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. So while we were enemies of the cross, while we hated Jesus, while we were willing to yell, crucify him, while we wanted nothing to do him, and while everything in the world was wanting to kill him, he still said, I'm going. The family drama doesn't bother me. I know what's going to happen. And I'm going to embrace the family drama. I'm going to embrace the cross. Whatever the cost to travel, I'm going to do it so that I can show love to my people. When I look at what Jesus is doing in coming to the world, I realize that the season that we're in is about the love of Christ. Now, I started off talking about the commercialization of Christmas because that's what Satan's doing. Please understand, we fight a spiritual war. Satan is very active in our world. And he wants nothing more than for you and for me to not focus on the love of Christ. He wants us to focus on the dollar amount that our gifts are. He wants us to focus on the pain and the agony of all the things that we were just talking about, all these stress points. He wants us to focus on all of that stuff and to sit and to look at ourselves and to say, man, I really don't want to do any of this. He wants us to isolate. Jesus is the one who says, I'll pay the cost. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm willing to embrace all that it takes for me to be with you. Satan's the one that says, don't do it. I'm going to ask you, who are you supposed to listen to? Who are we supposed to model our life after? I know you know the answer. So if I'm supposed to model my life after Christ, if his example is the example that I'm supposed to follow, then what do I do this season? What should I be doing? Should I be isolating myself, keeping myself away and saying, well, I don't want any of you? Or should I humble myself? Should I embrace the cost and realize that this season is more so about love than it is about anything else that the world is trying to tell me it's about? And if it's about love, what am I willing to do for others? How do I express that love? And so I'm going to give you a couple of examples. These aren't the only examples, but these are some that you could easily do. These are some that I encourage you to do. But these are some ways that I believe we can be lights of love in this world. First off, and this is one we've announced a couple of weeks, Mary Collier's been, actually it's not Mary, Mary Collier works at the Fern Creek Highview United Ministries. We have the little bucket out in the foyer to collect food for their pantry. And so the Okolona Life Group has been doing that. And actually, you all have been doing, I think there were like 30 bags of food, if I remember correctly. Wow. How wonderful is that? And by the way, when we give food to organizations like that, I want to tell you one of the challenges, and you may not have thought of this, so if you did, don't worry about it. But one of the challenges that organizations like that deal with are the reality that people don't have can openers. So they're always like, we want pop tops because that makes it easy. And that some families may not have an oven. So it's, how do you cook that? And so when we're talking about giving food to needy people, there are people who in our own neighborhoods, Fern Creek is our area, folks, who would say, I don't have an oven, or I don't have, maybe I have an oven, but maybe I have one burner that works. By the way, you ever grew up in a house like that? Don't raise your hand. I remember having one burner. I think we had two burners that worked. Others didn't work. And the oven didn't hold temperature right. There are families who the idea of having the ability to cook a dinner is a challenge. To open a can is a challenge. So when we're looking at helping people, those are the kind of people that you are helping in doing that. But what about inviting people to join your family for the holidays? How many people are there that don't have local family? They don't have people to go be with. They don't have an invite for Christmas Day lunch, Christmas dinner. Their kids grown and moved on. No one's around. What does it mean to a person who doesn't have that to be invited to join and to share in that? Maybe that's somewhere where you can express a love to other people. And by the way, what's it going to cost you? It's not like it's going to cost you your life. We're talking about an extra place setting at the table for somebody. I think of quality time together. Your coworkers could probably use some time with you helping decorate. Maybe you're the person that brings the Christmas spirit. Maybe you're the person that brings the love to the office. And for a season where people are stressed, in a season where people are focused on everything they shouldn't be focused on, you could be the person who brings love to that office. Says, look, let's decorate. Let's do some stuff. Maybe you're the one who decorates at home and you bring the season spirit. Maybe you're that person. Bring the love to people that you're around. I remember another idea, you could support a local charity. We have the Salvation Army kettle out in the foyer. You could go ring the bell for the Salvation Army. My good friend in Roswell, he and his son would do. He had a teenage son, and they would go ring the bell together out front of Walmart. And I thought, man, that's so neat that he and his son would do it, and that they would ring the bell and raise. And that was a way to show love, both to one another, but showing love to our community. I think we could learn to receive. Some people aren't really good receivers. Some people, it's like, oh, you got me a gift. Now I feel the need to give you a gift. Now I feel the need to pay you back. I know a lot of older ladies who that's probably a hard part for them. And when I think of older ladies, I'm thinking of the cooks, the people who would have a hard time setting down the spatula to say, look, I'm going to let someone else do for me. I'm going to let someone else bless me. Maybe this is a season where love shows through forgiveness. I told you that cousin who probably owes you something. Maybe you got someone in your family who owes you something. But maybe it's not money that they owe you. Maybe they owe you an apology. Maybe they owe you something more than money could afford. And maybe instead of even waiting for them to acknowledge it, maybe you forgive them. And maybe you love them in exchange. This idea of love reminds me of Matthew chapter 25, verse 34. Jesus is talking about the separation of the sheep and the goats. And he says this, the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, take the inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Our world is hurting because we have commercialized everything. It's not just the Christmas season that has received that commercialization. Every aspect of our life has. And so today, I want you to imagine a world where instead of us focusing on the cost of anything, instead of us focusing on the logistics, instead of us focusing on family drama, what if we focused on the love of Christ? What if for this 1 month, the rest of this month, what if that's all you did? What if from this day to January 1st, you focused on the love of Christ? How would the world change? And maybe you're saying, well, Josh, the world wouldn't change, but would your world change? Jesus came to change you, and then in so doing calls you to change the world. So can you imagine what happens to family grudges if there's love? Can you imagine what our family would look like if we loved one another. What would the world look like? Satan is trying to cover the love of Christ with stuff. But you need to be the reason that other people see the love of Christ. Philip Herndon has our application prayer this morning. I'm going to invite Philip in. If there is some way that we can walk with you through a journey of faith, through a journey of going to know Christ more fully, I'm going to be down front. Philip's going to pray for all of us, though, in that journey of faith. Thank you.
Let's bow our heads. Dear God, thank you for everything you've done for us. Thank you for everyone could hear Josh's message today. And please, in this time of Christmas, help us to not as much focus on all the distractions of life, but instead focus on your love and focus on giving it back to the people we love and protect. Thank you for everything you've done for us, everything you've given us. In Jesus' name, amen.